I appreciate you giving me your time for another Todd Talk. We take teaching theory and turn it into teaching practice. We're going to be talking about movement on the stage when you're giving your speech. This is one in a series of videos on public speaking. So, why is movement so important? Movement is so important because of this reason. Your audience can't move at all. They are a captured audience. They are sitting in their seats. And decorum says that they're not allowed to move. They have to sit in. It would be rude to get up and move, even if their legs are hurt. They have to stay in one place. So they're going to be very passive during your speech. The only activity that they really get is the activity that you provide them as the speaker. So if you're up here like this and you're just a talking head, and the only thing that the movement that they're getting is from your lips, the only movement they're getting really are the words that you're speaking. And that in itself is not going to be enough. That in itself is going to cause them to become possibly bored because of the inactivity. Not because of what you're saying is boring, but they're just inactive. So you want to be moving on the stage. You want to make sure that there is movement so that they, even though they are passive, they can almost live vicariously through you, through your activity. And because you are being active, their eyes are moving. So even though their bodies are not moving, their eyes are moving, and they're engaged as a result of that. And so that's a really important reason why you want to use movement. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of movement on the stage when you're given a speech. We're going to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of each of them, because one is not necessarily better than the other. You just have to find which one is more appropriate given the situation that you're in. So the first one we're going to talk about is what's called the tree. So as you can see, I am standing in front of a podium. And sometimes this is what speakers are dealing with, is that they're given a stage and they're given a podium because their microphone is on the podium, or they have a slide deck and their computer that they have to advance the slides are on the podium, and they're stuck behind this podium. And as a result, they can't move from beyond this podium. So they have to be a tree. They have to stand in one place. Now, you still can have movement even if you are stuck behind the podium. But you have to be really cognizant of the fact that you do have this podium that's blocking most of your body. So if I just put my hands right here and I talk, then I'm just a tree with no movement whatsoever. So the only movement that you're going to have is your hands. So you have to really use your hands when it comes to when you have to use the tree position. Your hands become the movement, kind of like the limbs, so they're blowing in the wind. You are going to have to move your hands to be the activity that the audience is going to get. I have a Todd talk on using your hands in a speech that you can watch to show you how various ways to use your hands. But you definitely want to be using your hands when you're stuck in this position, because then they're watching something, that something is causing them to look around, something is causing their eyes to dart, something is causing them to have to move their eyes around rather than just look at one place. So even though I'm stuck behind this, I can't move the rest of my body. I can move my hands, and this movement is going to hopefully engage and make the audience a little more active because my hands are doing that. Now, what are advantages to using the tree? I've talked about a couple of them. So if you have a speech, the speech is in front of you. So if I have my speech written on this paper, it's here in one place. I can look down at it. I can look up. I can look down on it. I can look up. So I have it readily available to me. Another advantage to this is that if you have a PowerPoint and the screen is right next to you, you may not have much room to move around. So you don't want to block your screen. So you may have to kind of turn to the side to refer to your screen from time to time. You just may not have room in the venue itself to be able to do that. Some disadvantages, of course, are that you're really limited to just this space. And because of that, you can't move from stuff. You don't want to be swaying. That's going to be really distracting. So you have to have good movement, not distracting movement. And so the hand motions, you're using your hands, is going to be a good movement. Swaying around is not good movement. That just means that you're nervous, and that's going to be distracting to the audience. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're going to use movement, that the movement is purposeful. So that's one, is the tree. So even if you don't have the podium, though, sometimes you may be stuck in front of an audience in one place. Like in TED Talks themselves, they have a red carpet that they're standing on, and they're kind of stuck in this thing. But you still see a lot of TED performers move around the stage. They don't confine themselves to this red circle, although some do. But even in the red circle, you can move around. But if you are here if you're stuck in one place, or you prefer this, you still got to use your hands. Now you have a little more movement here because your body's more exposed. So you can use your hands down here, but you are using your hands a little bit more in the tree. The second one I want to talk about is what's called the fan. So when you think about a fan, when you turn on an oscillating fan, it kind of goes like this, very slowly and very purposefully. It oscillates back and forth. And this is kind of what you do if you're using the fan as a speaker. So you have to find out the limits of your stage. You don't want to fall off the stage. Or in this case, when I'm shooting a video, I have limits. I can only go to this. What I don't want to do is I don't want to come over here and be off screen. So I have limits of this right here, and I have limits of this right here. And I have to be aware of my limits on the stage. So if I come over here, I know I can only come to this edge right here when I'm speaking. Now, if I come over to this side, I really only have to this edge right here to speak. So this is kind of the playing field I have to work with. And so the way that the fan works is I'm talking, and then I may come over here, and I'm continuing to talk, and I'm coming and settling over here. And then I may set in the middle here. Now, what you don't want to do like an oscillating fan is I don't want to just be going like this, and then setting here, and then just coming back, and then coming back. That's going to be, again, distracting. So you want to mix it up a little bit. So I might start here, and then I may move over to here, and then as I'm talking to people. And then I may go over to all the way to the other side and come over here. And then I may just go back to here and talk again. And then I may come back to here and talk. So it's not like, it shouldn't be like a pattern that people are discerning, because then they're just going to be following you like a bouncing ball on a screen. So you want to break that. You want to break any sort of pattern and just have, natural movement on the stage. And so what this fan does is a couple of things. It makes you active on the stage. So it allows you to really, move your limbs, move your body, and it makes you active. So it causes the audience to be more active because they're following you. And I find because you're moving around the stage, they're kind of like following you with their head even. Kind of like watching a tennis match or watching that ball go back and forth and back and forth. It's making them somewhat active. I mean, when you go see a movie, you don't stare up at the screen and watch people just standing there not doing anything, just standing still. On the screen, they're moving around, which even makes a movie active, even though it's on a screen. So you are as well, because you're active, it's going to make the audience more active. They're not going to get content. They're not going to get bored. They're not going to get, because they're so passive, they're not going to get sleepy. So you're going to be moving around that stage periodically. And then you can stop and stay at a place for a little while and do some talking, talk to them for a few minutes, and then decide that you want to move over here and do this. And so again, a big advantage is that you are going to be active. And because you're active, the audience is going to be a little more active as well. Another advantage is it's just more pleasing to look at someone moving than watching someone stand in one place. You don't want to see that floating head. You want to see that person moving around. Some disadvantages are this. When you're doing the fan, you have to make sure of a couple of things. So I've already talked about, you have to be aware of your space. Another thing you have to be aware of, if you're doing PowerPoint slides, is you have to be aware of your screen. So let's say that this is my screen. This screen becomes no man's land for me. So what I mean by this is if I stand here and it's projecting a slide, the light is in my eyes, I'm blocking the slide, it's not good for anyone. So I have to kind of get off here to the side to make sure that people can see the slide and the light's not blinding me. And then when I go over to the other side, I have to get clear on the other side of the thing to make sure I clear it again to refer to my slides. Now, if you don't have a slide deck, this is not a problem. It's no big deal. But if you have a slide deck, you really have to be aware of where the slides are showing and that you don't ever block your screen. So that's one disadvantage, is you have to be aware of the screen if you're showing a slide deck. A second, not disadvantage, but something you really definitely need to be aware of is every time you move to another side of the stage, you have to reset and make sure that you're facing your audience, making sure that your legs are square with the audience so you're facing them and that your voice is projecting out. It also allows you to make proper eye contact. I have another Todd talk on appropriate eye contact when public speaking. And you can't make that eye contact if I come over here and I stand like this. I'm not looking at my audience at all, so I can't make the appropriate eye contact. So if I move over here, I have to make sure that I turn and square my body this way. If I come over here, I have to square my body straight, and so on and so forth. So you have to be aware that no matter where you move, when you come to a stop, you are squaring your body to the audience, towards the audience. Because even the slightest, like if I turn this way and my voice has to project this way, you may notice on the video my voice sounds lower in volume because my voice has to project that way and then before it gets over there. So, but if I'm projecting out to my audience, then they can hear me directly. So I have to make sure my voice is always pointed towards my audience. So that's something you have to be aware of if you're going to use something like the fan. If I'm using the tree, I can square myself up every time and just look at my audience and talk to my audience. I may look from side to side when I'm making eye contact, but I'm really in this small range of motion. But in the fan, you have a much larger range of motion that you have to make sure that you're squaring up and talking to your audience. So number 2 is the fan. The third one I want to talk about is what's called the rabbit. And the rabbit is one of high energy, where you're moving around the room and when you're talking about something that's really exciting and you're not really standing still that much. You're like a rabbit that's hopping around all the time and doing what's called a binky. When rabbits get excited, they do a binky and they kind of jump in the air. And so you're kind of doing the same thing. And you're getting to be very active. You're using your hands and it's high energy. You'll see motivational speakers that use the rabbit and they're constantly moving around the stage. And they do this purposefully to get the audience involved. They want the audience high energy. They want that audience like looking at your every movement, hanging on every word because you're moving around and you're being very active. Now, when it comes to the rabbit is great when you're trying to get people excited about things. The rabbit can also be exhausting. So if you're talking about really important things and you're using the rabbit and you're talking about this, I'm going to talk about this really important thing. Like people are so like paying attention to you and they're moving around, they may miss that important thing. So if you're doing the rabbit and you want to talk about something really important, you may have to stop for a second and talk about that important thing and then get back to the rabbit. So there has to be some variation to that. You can't do the rabbit all the time because not only are you going to exhaust your audience, depending upon the length of the speech, you may exhaust yourself. So so the advantages of the rabbit are it really engages the audience. It really gets them going. It really gets them active, and it gets them excited about a speech that you're giving. Now, if you're giving a speech that doesn't involve excitement, if you're giving a eulogy, you don't want to up to here. Oh, my uncle died, and my uncle was great. And it's a eulogy. You need to be appropriate. So you'd probably be in the tree. Well, my uncle died, and he was a great man. You're giving an appropriate movement to the whatever it is that your venue is. So you have to be careful that you're not using the rabbit in inappropriate times. But the rabbit does have the advantages of really being active and really getting the audience involved. But again, you have to be aware of the screen. The disadvantages are you might block the screen, but you're moving so fast that maybe it's okay you don't block the screen. But because you're never really getting set, you have to be very aware that when you're using the rabbit that you are facing the audience kind of all the time as you're moving around. And I would move, if I had a bigger stage, I would move a lot more, but I only have my limited stage. But you would be moving around and constantly making eye contact, constantly squaring yourself to the stage, and you have to be aware of that. You can't like be doing this and like going back and forth. And you have to. So it's kind of like a dance almost. So it's a little bit of choreography that you have to use when you're doing the rabbit. So when it comes to all three of these, the tree, the fan, or the rabbit, you have to pick the one that's like anything with public speaking, whether it's doing your opening, your closing, using your hands. Everything needs to be deliberate and thought out. The best speakers think about all of this. They say there are natural born speakers. That is incorrect. All speakers work really hard at what they do. And so they really think about what they're going to do. They really, okay, this is appropriate for this. So right now I'm at a stage where I think the fan is appropriate. So I'm using the fan right now because I want to make sure that I'm being active as I'm moving around, to make sure that it's passive, especially on a video format where I can't be that active. A lot of times I'm stuck behind in one place. So I want to make sure I'm a little bit active to keep it going, because we're getting into over 10 minutes in length. And I want to make sure I'm continuing to be active. So I'm being deliberate about my decisions. So we have to decide, like, what is appropriate. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm giving a speech that's an inspiring speech, and I'm talking, and this happened to me, I had an inspiring speech I was given to 850 people on the stage. I used the rabbit because I'm trying to get people excited about something. I'm trying to inspire them. There's 850 people. They're sitting in one place. I'm trying to get them up because we're getting ready to start this conference, and I want to get them going. So the rabbit was appropriate. The exact same speech I gave in a classroom full with 20 people. The rabbit was not appropriate. So I used the fan, because if I used the rabbit, I was going to overwhelm my audience of 20 and they were going to be exhausted. So I just I went to the fan and kind of talked and used the fan in order to express the exact same information, but in a way that was more appropriate to the place I was at and the audience I had. If I had to make like a 5-10 minute announcement, I may just use the tree. If I had something really like an announcement to make to people, look, here are some important things I really want you to get. Pay attention, because I want them just paying attention to my words, not my movement. So you have to pick the movement that is best for what you're doing. And you may do a mixture of these three, a combination. So you might start with the tree when you're starting your speech. And then you may get into the fan as you're talking about various things in your speech. And then if you get to a really exciting part, you get into the rabbit. And then you may go back to the fan. And then you may get to your conclusion and end with the tree, which is what I'm going to do here today. So in summary, movement is really important when you're giving a speech, because again, you're the only movement that your audience is going to experience. And so you're the only one providing, or the only one with the ability to provide them with that. And if you don't provide them with that, then they're going to be bored or very passive. And as a result, the likelihood of them being bored is going to be high. So you got to make sure that you think about the movement that's appropriate to what it is that you're doing. And you want to make sure that that movement fits with either the topic or the space you're in or the audience that you're in. And you have to really give that some thought. Because also another thing, in addition to being deliberate about the choices that you make, is the reflection afterwards. So are you reflecting upon, could I have done this in a different way and had a more effective outcome? Could I have used the tree here instead of the fan, or vice versa? Which one would have been better? Would I have got my audience more excited or more inspired if I had done the rabbit during this time? So you have to really give a lot of thought to that, because again, movement doesn't happen in the room except from you. You're the only source of movement. And so the way you move and the way you think about movement and the purpose that you're using your movement for is so important to think about.